and my totally tubular gamers. We're back with another video. Let's get to it.
Well, it's finally that time. We're going to be talking about some Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Throughout the years, many people have asked me to look at Tony Hawk games. Well, today, we're going to be looking at some. Now, Tony Hawk, he doesn't really need much of an introduction, right? You know who he is, I know who he is, and I know what he does. He rides the little board with the wheels on it and does his big spin move, but he also has a wildly successful line of video games. Starting all the way back in '99, the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series is one of the most iconic video game series of all time. Even though it doesn't have the power, or shall I say street cred, that it once did, man, this series was everywhere in the 2000s. People fell in love with these games, and they're still widely beloved today. And so for today's video, we're going to be ranking all of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games from worst to best. And you might be going, you've only brought up Pro Skater. What about the other Tony Hawk games? What about like Thug and Thug 2 and American Wasteland? Well, today we're not going to be talking about those, and while I'm sure that's going to disappoint plenty of people, the simple truth is I haven't played all those other Tony Hawk games. There are so many Tony Hawk games, and I have not personally sat down and tried all of them. I've never really played American Wasteland, and I still haven't played those stupid motion games, and so I can't exactly rank games that I have zero experience with. But you know what I do have experience with? All of the Pro Skater games, and so that's really what we're looking at today. Pro Skater 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Pro Skater HD, Pro Skater 1+2, and finally the newly released Pro Skater 3+4. And I'll only be looking at the home console versions of these games. I know there are a number of handheld Pro Skater games. Some of them are actually pretty good, but that's not the point of today's video. We're looking at the home console games. I'm going to be ranking these games from worst to best, giving each one of them a little review, stacking them up against each other, doing a little comparing, contrasting, sharing my thoughts, feelings, memories, etc., and seeing which ones are really worth your time. That being said, I got a lot of memories with these games, so start the car up, start going to bed, get the popcorn, get the Wendy's spicy nuggets, the beef jerky, however you're going to watch or listen to this video. We might be here a while. I'm totally tubular, Jonathan. We're going to have a tubular time here. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Got the Patreon and the super thanks. Any support is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you all so very much. I really do appreciate you all. But enough of this intro. The question now becomes, what is the worst of the Pro Skater series? It's probably pretty obvious. And so here we have it, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, releasing initially in 2015. It should come as absolutely no surprise that this is not only the worst in the entire Pro Skater series, but it's arguably the worst Tony Hawk game of them all. And it's also like my most hated game of all time, but I'm not going to get into that story here. I've shared it plenty of times. It even got its own separate video. Let's just talk about the game and its quality, or really lack thereof. Pro Skater 5, I mean, I'll just be blunt about it, is a flaming piece of dog shit that shouldn't be played by anybody who values their life or breathes air. There are few games to have released in the last 10 years that are anywhere near as bad as Pro Skater 5. This game is unbelievably horrible by every conceivable metric. Outside of this game's soundtrack, I do not have one nice thing to say about it. So I'll start with the soundtrack and say that it's actually got a whole lot of bangers. Tony Hawk himself picked the music, and yeah, I really got no complaints here. It's full of some awesome songs, but outside of that, this game has nothing going for it. This game is still shockingly bad in every conceivable way, and it's still surprising that Activision really put this out and thought that this was acceptable. It wasn't okay then, and it's certainly not okay now. When it comes to this game's format, it's very similar to Pro Skater 4, where you just pick a map and you can choose some missions, or you can just free roam if you'd like, and there's some collectibles here and there. There's a number of characters to choose from, and there's around a dozen or so maps in this game. So what makes it terrible? Everything that could possibly go wrong with a skateboarding game goes wrong in this game. One of the most important aspects of an extreme sports game, just video games in general, is the controls. And this game just completely shits the bed when it comes to the controls. And I'm not talking, oh, the little 2-year-old toddler shit the bed. I'm talking like a grown-ass man shit the bed, and you're just like, what the fuck? How did this even happen? And it's not just the controls. The physics and feel also shit the bed by the same grown-ass man. And it's surprising because I feel like Tony Hawk games really nailed the controls and physics and feel. And you know, like the early 2000s, how did we take such a large step backwards? How does this feel way worse than almost any other Tony Hawk game? The physics are just so all over the place. They're wildly inconsistent. The game feels like it's playing by its own rules. The glitches and bugs to do with the physics ruin it even further, and it just doesn't feel nice. Every other Tony Hawk Pro Skater feels nicer than Pro Skater 5. The controls, along with the feel, are clunky, wildly unresponsive, and incredibly slippery. It all just comes off as incredibly janky, which is just completely unacceptable for the 5th entry in a series. And while you can eventually kind of get used to it, you shouldn't have to do that. It shouldn't be this bad, and it just kind of ruins everything. I mean, if the skateboarding sucks in this skateboarding game, well, we're not exactly off to a great start here, but it only gets worse. So much worse. The level design and objectives are just mind-numbingly terrible. The level design is so uninspired, bland, generic, and it's just so unremarkable. It's devoid of any creativity, and every single thing the level design tries to do in this game, it's been done much better in legit any other pro skater. These levels don't have a good flow to them, it's not fun to explore them, and they're just poorly designed. In the older pro skater games, everything was meticulously laid out, everything was carefully placed down to allow the level to have a certain flow to it. Not in Pro Skater 5. Shit is just thrown all over the place randomly, with tons of dead ends in areas that just don't really make any sense. And the objectives, oh, it is so lame. These are the most uninspired, monotonous, tedious objectives you could find in like any extreme sports game. You will find more creativity in a rotting deer corpse on the side of the road than you will find in Pro Skater 5. It's just lacking any substance. It really doesn't matter what the map is, the objectives are almost the same every single time. A few of them are a little different here and there, but they're pretty much the same. Get points. Don't let your head explode in the big head mode by getting points. Do some tricks for Tony. Shoot out some missiles. Grind on a few things and a bunch of stupid collectibles. That's pretty much all of the objectives for every single level. They introduce some little gimmicks here and there, like being able to jump super high or low gravity or even turning big in a level, but this doesn't really change anything. If anything, it actually exposes the physics and controls even worse, making them feel even worse than they did before. The game also has this stupid slam where you can just immediately slam onto the ground or onto a grind rail, and this just ruins the flow you'll have with anything. And I never found myself getting into a proper groove thanks to this stupid slam, and how the special meter works now, where it's just a bar you activate and you just do the special moves instead of your normal tricks. Gone are the button inputs like a fighting game or, you know, any skill whatsoever. It's horrible, I hate it, and it's an insult to all of the other pro skater games. All of them. This game also had a pretty big focus on the online mode, which has since been shut down, so not only is a large portion of the game just completely not functioning, but you also can't get every achievement now. Not that the online mode was anything special here. And the last thing I want to bring up is this game's presentation. You've seen how it looks. Yeah, it looks absolutely awful. This came out in 2015, the same year as The Witcher 3, Fallout 4, Batman Arkham Knight, and then we have Peak Skater 5. Yeah, there's a reason I did what I did when I played this game on stream. Just playing with putty here. Oh, there we go. Pro Skater 5. There we go. And so here we have Pro Skater HD releasing initially in 2012. So this is not Pro Skater 1+2 or 3+4. This was actually the first remake of Pro Skater 1 and 2 that was developed by Robomoto and released digitally for the 360, PS3, and PC. And it's actually been delisted completely, so unless you bought this one ages ago, there's no legal way to play this game. But I actually did buy this game ages ago. I got it back when it came out and was pretty disappointed by it. Like I said, it was developed by Robomoto. You know what else they developed? They developed that fucking awful Pro Skater 5, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that this isn't a very good game. So what even is this game? Why is it called HD? Well, it is essentially a remake of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, and then there was a DLC that added some stuff from the third game. It is easily the worst way to play these games. It is the opposite of the definitive edition. It is the undefinitive edition. I don't know if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to say is it's way better to just go boot up the PS1 and play Pro Skater on that than play this pile of crap. But you might be wondering, what makes Pro Skater HD as bad as it is? Is it the structure? Is it the gameplay? Is it the presentation? Did they just completely lose the plot here, or the soul, the essence, the aura of the original Pro Skater? The answer is yes. the game just completely drops the ball when it comes to recreating anything from the older Pro Skater games. It has the same format as the original 2 games, with the timer, the objectives, the collectibles, etc. There's a number of skaters to choose from here, but it's actually smaller than some of the prior games, and when it comes to the levels they have here, it's just kind of baffling. I remember being shocked back in the day, and I look back now and I'm just like, what the fuck? It doesn't have all of the maps from Pro Skater 1 and 2. It has some of them, but it doesn't have all of them, and then the DLC adds 3 maps from Pro Skater 3, and it's just so weird that it doesn't have all of the maps from the originals, or at least most of the maps. Like, they have School 2 here, but not School 1. Seriously? But alright, it doesn't have all of the skaters or maps from the original 3. Is the gameplay decent at least? Are you kidding yourself? Robo-Moto and good gameplay just do not go together whatsoever. They go as well together as peanut butter and ketchup, i.e. they don't. The gameplay sucks ass in Pro Skater HD. There's really just no two ways about it. The controls and physics are downright terrible. I would say they are slightly better than what Pro Skater 5 has, but that's not really saying much. That's like saying the shit I took yesterday was better than the shit I took today. The controls, the feel, the physics, it's just not there. It feels incredibly sluggish. The game has a terrible flow to it. It feels so slow. The physics are incredibly inconsistent. It never feels like you have a good grasp on the skateboard itself, and it just feels incredibly clunky. How is it that they recreate the original Pro Skater like 13 years later and it somehow feels worse? The original Pro Skater was made with the D-pad in mind, and it feels and controls leagues above whatever Pro Skater HD is doing. It's just insulting to the franchise. Something else that I've always hated about Pro Skater HD is the big drops also. When you jump off a really big jump, this big flashing warning screen, big drop incoming goes on screen, and you can actually land these if you hold the ollie button down, but it just ruins the flow. Like, why did they even include this? It just disrupts the gameplay even further. As for the objectives and what you're doing in these levels, it's pretty much the same as the original games, and so, you know, the level design is actually good since it's the originals. The objectives are actually okay here. There are some different and new objectives thrown in there. You can tell which ones they are because they suck, but hey, at least we're not scraping the bottom of the toilet bowl like we were with Peak Skater 5. It's not mind-numbingly terrible. It's just terrible. Unfortunately, the presentation isn't very good either. Even for 2012, this wasn't a great looking game. It looks like an early PS3 title. If you're playing on console, it doesn't even run at 60 FPS, which just makes it feel even worse. I don't have nice things to say about the presentation. I will say the soundtrack is pretty decent. A lot of the classics return from the older games, and there's some new stuff in here that isn't terrible. Unlike this game's interface, you know, I'm one to rarely complain about an interface in a game outside of Call of Duty and maybe Hogwarts Legacy, but I hate this game's interface. It just looks so cheap and generic. This game in general just feels really cheap and thrown together. It's missing so much of what the original Pro Skaters had. Like, I can barely even call this a remake. It's missing maps, skaters, moves, create a park, fucking split screen isn't even here. Are you kidding me? And what do you get in return? You get 2 things. You get jack and shit. Even if we focus on what we have versus what we don't have and don't compare it to any of the other Pro Skater games, it's still a pretty mediocre skating game that isn't worth your time. Sure, there might be a little bit of fun to be had here, but you could do so much better in the Tony Hawk series, and now that's been delisted, you'd really have to go out of your way to play this one, and it's just simply not worth it. And so here we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the one that started it all, releasing initially for the PlayStation in 1999. This would kick off easily the most well-known extreme sports game series of them all. And all these years later, the original Pro Skater, it's still pretty fun. It certainly has aged in plenty of areas, and coming back to it can be a little difficult, especially if you've played really any of the other Pro Skater games, but that doesn't mean there isn't a certain level of enjoyment you'll always have while playing this original game. So this game really established the entire Tony Hawk formula. It laid the foundation, it created the blueprint. and every Tony Hawk game since has built off of this original game. But the original game had a pretty simple premise. You just chose one of your favorite skaters at the time and you were dropped into a level where you only had 2 minutes to explore and complete some basic objectives. And then along the way you would do a bunch of tricks. Some were realistic, most of them were not. The game absolutely leaned on it being more of an arcade sports game than anything else, and that's exactly what people loved about it. It didn't take itself super seriously. It wasn't presenting itself as a sim. It was an unserious, fun skating game that really focused on just creating the best experience for the player. And that vibe still permeates throughout this entire game, even if it is over 25 years old now, which is crazy to say. Now, when it comes to actually playing the original Pro Skater in the modern day, it certainly does feel dated. You can't do a bunch of the fancy tricks or moves that you can do in literally any of the other later Tony Hawk games. You can't revert, you can't manual, you can't wall plant. It's certainly a bit more limited. Yeah, it does make the game a bit more shallow as a result. You won't be stringing together these crazy combos and will really instead be focusing on just performing one big move. But hey, at least it's still fun to do tricks in this game, and it actually controls pretty decent as well. It doesn't feel anywhere near as smooth or nice as really any other Pro Skater game outside of HD and 5, but it's still easy to pick up and play and understand the controls. And you gotta remember, all of the levels were made with this in mind. Now, despite the game's age, I think the level design is actually still very well done in the original Pro Skater. There's just some absolutely legendary levels in this game, from warehouse, school, streets, Chicago, downhill jam. Like, there's some really iconic stages here, and they actually have a good flow to them. They're well designed, and it's still engaging to go through these levels. Yeah, there is some fog, and the game certainly looks dated, but there's still plenty of entertainment to be had here. I still enjoy completing these objectives. Yeah, they're not the most complex objectives you'll find in a Tony Hawk game, but sometimes simplicity really is king. Collecting the skate letters will almost never get old outside of Peak 5. Getting high scores is interesting since you don't have a bunch of tools at your disposal, and you're actually going to have to explore around these levels if you want to complete all of the objectives. And while it won't take you more than a few hours to beat the game, you can do so with a number of different skaters, and it's fun to play through this game in quick short bursts. Look, obviously later Tony Hawk games are much deeper, nuanced, complex, and add a whole lot more to the series, but this was also the first game in the entire series. You gotta cut it some slack, you gotta give it some leeway. This game really left a huge impact for the series, and for the most part, things would only go up from here. This is one of those instances where I would say it's a good thing that one of the weakest games in the entire series is the original. That just means they've really improved on what the original had, and I certainly think that's the case here. There was also the split screen multiplayer that was a lot of fun, and you know, above all else, this game was incredibly revolutionary. There's a clear distinction pre-Pro Skater and post-Pro Skater when it comes to skateboarding games, or really extreme sports games in general, and that's something that nobody will ever be able to take away from this game. Sure, there are plenty of better Pro Skater or Tony Hawk games, but this was the original, and I still think it's worth playing all these years. Even with all of these remakes, there's a certain charm in coming back to the original, and I think it's still worth your time. And so here we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 releasing initially in 2000, but the version that I've always stuck to is the enhanced re-release for the original Xbox, which was titled 2X, and that's the version we're going to be looking at today. So Pro Skater 2 really looked at that original game and just cranked everything up quite a bit. It's one of those sequels where I feel like they improved on everything. The game plays better, it looks better, it feels better, it controls better, it has a better flow to it, there's more complexity and nuance, the maps are better, the game has more of a personality. It's just a better game overall. But it also doesn't abandon what made the original Pro Skater great. The game still is pretty much the same format to it, where you pick from around a dozen or so skater legends or Spider-Man, pick a map, and then you're just thrown into it. You have 2 minutes to complete some goals, do some tricks, and explore around. These maps aren't gargantuan, but there's tons of gaps, secrets, collectibles, and things to do in them. You'll spend a decent amount of time just exploring around, getting familiar with the map, finding some of the collectibles, and then completing these objectives. And these objectives are a little bit more varied, there's a little bit more depth to them, and the game might make you even get a little creative if you want to complete some of these goals. And completing these goals, it's always a great time. Nothing is super complicated, and you can usually figure out what you're supposed to do pretty quickly, and I think the game does a generally good job at pointing you in the right direction. But something else that does a good job at pointing you in the right direction is the level design. I think the level design is better than what even the first Pro Skater had. These maps have great flows to them. There's tons of secrets, lots of areas to create some really big combos and chains, and each one feels meticulously handcrafted. They're some of the best levels you'll find in any Tony Hawk game all these years later. But none of this wouldn't matter if the controls, feel, or physics weren't there. Thankfully, they're here. They're tighter than what the first game had, they feel a lot better, and it's even easier to pick up and play. Anybody can pick this game up and immediately start doing some cool tricks, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a ton of depth to this game. There's actually a lot of depth, way more than the first game, thanks to the introduction of the manual. Yeah, that move we used to link all of our combos and big moves together, it was introduced right here in the second title, and it adds just so much complexity to the overall gameplay. This really is low-key a game changer, and that's because thanks to this we're able to chain together all of our big moves and grinds, and you can just get tons upon tons of points. It really changes the flow of the entire game and how you do tricks, and it changes it for the better. It adds more complexity, it adds more skill. It really raises the skill ceiling, and it just makes the game so much more fun. When you're able to chain together these absolutely massive combos, it feels so nice. There's still no reverts, but even without that, there's a lot of complexity here. They also introduced wall riding and the ability to do transfers, and all of these levels were made with these moves in mind. But it goes even further. The game leans more into the more arcadey side of things than the first one ever did. You ollie higher, you can do more moves in quick succession, and the game just runs faster than what the first game ever had. And it almost creates this zen-like flow that this series really became well known for. It all just flows incredibly well. The pacing is great on these maps, and here we are 25 plus years later, and everything still really does come together to create a wonderful experience. The gameplay is still satisfying, it's rewarding, and most importantly, it's fun. It's just so much fun no matter what you're doing, whether you're just doing a bunch of tricks and linking everything together, or the objectives, or just exploring around the map. It's always a good time. The game still has that sense of style, that aura, and that personality that the first one had as well. It has arguably more than what the first game had, and I just love this game's vibes. And being able to play as Spider-Man certainly helps out with those vibes. It just shows that they were going for something just off the wall and crazy. They're not trying to be super serious or simulator-like. And while obviously this doesn't get as crazy as, say, Thug 2 or American Wasteland, it still is a bit on the wild side. The game also looks quite a bit better than the original. Like, the original game looked good, but this does look better, and the draw distance is better as well. And when it comes to the soundtrack, oh, it is absolutely incredible. The soundtrack to Pro Skater 2 is so good. We really could be here all day when it comes to this game's soundtrack. There's just too many bangers to mention all of them. I will say this is the game that really got me into Rage Against the Machine though, Guerrilla Radio. It's such a good main theme. The soundtrack, and really just everything else, allows this game to just come together to be a phenomenal experience, even nowadays. There's multiplayer, there's a level editor, and there's a lot of fun here. The game was exceptionally well received when it released and sold like crazy, and for good reason. Yeah, I think there are plenty of other Tony Hawk games that are better, but that doesn't deny this game's quality. It really is a banger. And so here we have Pro Skater 4, which was developed by Neversoft and released in 2002. Now, Pro Skater 4 brought a number of changes to the Pro Skater formula, and looking back, this title was more of a transitionary title for where the series would end up going. But even with that in mind, oh, this game still rules. It kicks some serious ass. The biggest change to Pro Skater 4 is in the game's format and structure. Rather than being dropped into these levels where you only have 2 minutes to explore and complete some objectives, this game instead drops you into these slightly larger areas where you can actually free roam. You can freely explore to your heart's content, but if you want to do the objectives and the missions, instead of them showing up with a timer, you have to go find NPCs who will now give you each objective one at a time. And this really does change the flow and pacing of the entire game, and it's what every Tony Hawk game would use going forward, Thug 2, etc. And while there are a certain subset of people who think that this change was not for the better, I am not one of those people. It allows the gameplay to really open up, and I think they had done all that they could do with the timer-based gameplay, and by the 4th entry, yeah, we started to need something a little different, and this absolutely provides that. So now that there's a bigger emphasis on exploration and the free skating aspect of things, how are these levels? Well, they're slightly bigger than what was in the older games, but I think they're actually very well designed. There's a lot of secrets, there's a lot of gaps, and they all flow very well. There's some banger maps here, like some real whoppers. I love the Alcatraz map, I love the San Francisco map. Really, you know, just all of the California maps are just kind of goated in this game, but seriously, there are some very well designed maps, and I think that this structure allowed them to get a bit more creative when it comes to the level design. It also really allowed them to get way more creative when it comes to the objectives in this game. Some of these levels have you doing just straight up wacky shit that you were not doing in the prior games, and I think there's a lot of memorable ones in here. And while it doesn't go insane to the membrane like say Thug 2, there's still a ton of memorable moments and goals that you'll have to complete with whichever character you choose. When it comes to this game's character roster, yeah, pretty much everybody from the old ones are here. There's a great selection, and when it comes to the guest characters, we have Eddie, which is Iron Maiden's mascot, and then Jango Fett. Yeah, Jango Fett from Star Wars appears here, and I always thought that was pretty cool, and he's got some cool tricks. But speaking of performing tricks, you gotta ask, how are the controls? How are the physics? How is the feel? Is it different from Pro Skater 3? Is it better? Well, in some ways, it arguably is better than what the prior Pro Skater games had. It feels excellent. The physics are superb. The controls are just as easy to pick up and play, but hard to master. And while the game doesn't introduce a revolutionary concept like the manuals or the reverts, it does introduce the spine transfer, allowing you to transfer between quarter pipes back to back. And while it doesn't go crazy like say a revert would, I think this is still a pretty cool little addition, and the game absolutely does take advantage of this. There are plenty of areas across these levels where they actually really want you to do this, like they were designed with this in mind, and you know, I think it's pretty cool. It's a neat little addition. And then on top of this, like all of the tricks that you could do in the previous 3 games are here with even more new ones, so it's like you just have this wide roster of tricks that you can do at this point, meaning that you can create pretty much an infinite number of combos and chains in this game. Now another small little wrinkle thrown into Pro Skater 4 was the ability to skitch, where you just hang on to the back of moving vehicles. And while this doesn't exactly set the world on fire, it's a neat little addition that would end up being used in pretty much every Tony Hawk game going forward. Like the prior Pro Skater games, there's tons of unlocks and replayability here. You'll want to play through this campaign as many different skaters as possible. You'll be spending a good while with this one, especially if you want to get decent at it. Multiplayer returns here, and there was even online multiplayer. Yeah, for a game in 2002, it would connect with dial-up, which is just crazy to think about. And the game had plenty of multiplayer modes here as well. Like Pro Skater 4 was the complete package, and it certainly looked like it too. For 2002, this is a pretty good looking game. Yeah, it doesn't look all that different from Pro Skater 3, but I think it looks nice. There's some nice animations and environments, and then the music, oh, I love the soundtrack to Pro Skater 4 also. It's very different from what the first 3 games had. It goes for a different kind of vibe. There's a lot of rap here, and it's actually pretty good. Pro Skater 4 really was the game to get me into rap, and really this style of music. And I look back now and I'm just like, oh, there's so many bangers when it comes to Pro Skater 4 soundtrack. Like the soundtrack alone is worth listening to without even playing the game. And it further pushed this game's mood, its vibe, and its general atmosphere, which is different from the prior 3 games, but it's still pretty in line with Tony Hawk. Look, at this point, Pro Skater 4, it really is a certified hood classic. Like, it's just a fantastic game that I have zero problem recommending. Even if you don't really like skateboarding games, I think you're still gonna find some fun here. And this game would really usher in a new era for Tony Hawk going forward, one that many people still love to this day, myself included, but Pro Skater 4, totally worth your time. And so here we have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, developed by Vicarious Visions. It was released in 2020. Now I very much remember when this got announced, and I was a bit hesitant to say the least. I mean, we had gotten a remake of 1, 2, and kinda 3 like 7 or 8 years prior, and it wasn't very good, and then we had Pro Skater 5, which certainly wasn't very good, and this was really the next main Tony Hawk game since then, so I waited till it came out, heard good things about it, checked it out myself, and oh yeah, this is a great game, and it's easily the definitive way to play Pro Skater 1 and 2 these days. And that's not a slight on those original games, it's just this game really brings them into the modern age. There's a lot of quality of life improvements. They bring a bunch of the stuff from the later games in, such as manualing and reverting. Yeah, this is just the best way to play it, and if you want to have the most fun with these first 2 games, you really can't go wrong here. Since this is a remake, let's talk about the presentation. I think this is a very good looking game. While it's not an absolute jaw jaw-dropper, I still think it looks nice. There's some nice environments here, the characters look decent enough, and the animations, they're not stiff as shit. While some people may argue that this game doesn't have the same aura or atmosphere as the older games, I think it does a pretty good job at recreating it. And at the very least, the art style and really graphics in general are very consistent across both games. They look basically identical. Now, when it comes to this game's format and structure, it is virtually the same as the original two games, where you get to choose one of your favorite skaters. There's a lot more skaters to choose from now. You then get to choose between Pro Skater 1 or 2, go into a level, there's a 2-minute timer and some goals to complete, and it's as simple as that. And you know, for a remake of 1 and 2, there's no other way I'd rather have it. These levels were designed with the timer in mind, and really these objectives in mind as well. When it comes to the levels, they brought all of the levels back from the original 2 Pro Skaters. All of them return here, and they're just as great as ever. Not only do like all of the secrets and objectives return from those original games, but there's also a bunch of fan service thrown in there for longtime fans. If you're somebody who's been playing the Tony Hawk series for, you know, a very long time, I think you're really going to be picking up what this game is putting down. You're going to be smelling what it's cooking. But as you can guess, all of the fan service, all of the levels, objectives, all of that, it doesn't mean a damn thing if the core moment-to-moment gameplay sucks. But thankfully, that is absolutely not the case here. This game feels absolutely incredible. Like, I still cannot get over how great this game feels. It's like the best feeling Tony Hawk game of them all. Sure, they had 20 plus years of experience to build off of, but then again, Pro Skater 5 had like 15 years to build off of, and we know how that went. Seriously, the controls are just about as close to flawless as it gets. Easy to pick up and play, hard to master, super smooth, very responsive, and it just feels like a love letter to all of the Tony Hawk games before it. The physics are exceptional also. The game is incredibly consistent and responsive, like it just controls like a dream. I don't really know how it can get any better than this, and even 3+4 just kind of replicated what this game had. And that's because it was so damn good. And like I mentioned, they bring in some stuff from the later Tony Hawk games. They bring in reverts, spine transfers, wall plants, you can even do double flips, meaning all the fancy shit that you could do in like Pro Skater 4 and Underground are here. But if you're a purist and you don't want any of that, the game actually offers you that as well. You can play the game like the old ones, but man, I love doing all the crazy shit. You feel so cool in this game when you string together some amazing combos, and it really doesn't matter how many years it's been, it's always going to be incredibly rewarding when you just pull off these huge number combos. Like, that shit feels so good. This game's flow is just immaculate. It is so good, and I loved playing through these levels again and completing these objectives. It was just such a fun time. And this game really felt like a breath of fresh air, especially for the modern AAA gaming scene. We never get any AAA games like this, and so it was just really a refreshing, fun experience. Now, like the originals, this game offers plenty of replayability and secrets. It actually offers an entire progression system. This isn't like a battle pass or some live service shit. No, it's just doing some challenges and you get to unlock more stuff from the store, and I think this is a cool little addition. It adds even more to the replayability. But of course, there's more to it. There's the multiplayer, there's online multiplayer, and you know what? It's actually pretty decent here. I've had some fun messing around in Free Skate, and there are a number of different game modes. And all in all, this is really just a great experience. But how's the soundtrack? I was a bit nervous how the soundtrack would be, especially with how Pro Skater HD handled things, and I gotta say, the soundtrack's actually pretty good here. For the most part, almost every song has actually returned. Yeah, there are a few omissions, but I think the soundtrack's pretty solid here. And it's very faithful to the original two games, and that's a word I want to harp on for a second, faithful. These are very faithful remakes to the original Pro Skaters. They respect them, they honor them, and they build on them in the best of ways. If you're somebody who's ever had even a fleeting interest in skateboarding games or Pro Skater, this is the one that you should check out. It's widely available, and it really is one of the best games in the entire series. I had an absolute blast with this, and I still come back to it from time to time. While I don't think it's the very best Tony Hawk game of them all, it's the one that I could probably recommend the most. It's a great starting point for anybody interested in this series, and it's probably the most accessible Tony Hawk game of them all, and I mean that in a good way. This game's quality of life improvements really are something special. This game in general is something special. It would also end up being the last game developed by Vicarious Visions, which is very unfortunate, but hey, at least they went out with a real banger. I 100% recommend this game. And so here we have the latest in the Tony Hawk series. We have Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 releasing here in 2025. Now, I was pretty excited for this one. I didn't think it would happen after all those stories came out that 3+4 was pitched by Vicarious Visions and subsequently rejected, but Iron Galaxy has shown up to deliver us one of the very best Tony Hawk games of them all. I was playing this game pretty non-stop, and I gotta say, it's a really great time. Is it the most faithful remake of Pro Skater 3 and 4? No, but that doesn't mean that it's not enjoyable, and that doesn't mean that it's still not a great game. So, when it comes to this game's format and structure, it's very similar to 1+2. You choose one of many different Pro Skaters. There's actually a ton of different characters to choose from. Then you get to select either Pro Skater 3 or 4, jump into a level, and you've got a 2-minute timer. Well, you actually can extend the timer up to an hour, but it's still got that timer-based gameplay, where you get to explore around, do a bunch of crazy tricks, and of course complete some objectives. Now, if you remember correctly, Pro Skater 4 did not actually have this format to it. That was the one that introduced all of the free roaming aspects to the Tony Hawk franchise. It never had any timer-based gameplay, at least not in the main career mode. And I know that there have been a number of people disappointed that the game doesn't have the same type of career mode, and I'm a little disappointed too. I don't think that it was totally unreasonable to expect the career mode to return. However, I will say that almost all of the objectives that you would do in the original Pro Skater 4 do return in this remake. There's just now the added timer, and it feels a bit more arcadey, similar to, you know, Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3. And speaking of Pro Skater 3, I obviously got no issue with the timer-based gameplay returning here, since that's what was in the original, and it perfectly fits here. Now, when it comes to this game's level selection, really all of the levels from Pro Skater 3 and 4 return here, but there were some changes to the Pro Skater 4 levels, and I wouldn't exactly say that this was for the best. To accommodate the new timer-based gameplay, 3 of the levels were adjusted to be levels where you just try to get as many points as possible, and I feel like these levels have been gimped as a result of that. For instance, when you go to the zoo level, there's no animals here whatsoever, and all of the weird objectives you did in Pro Skater 4 are just totally gone here. It really is just get as many points as possible, and it feels like the identity of these levels have been lost a little bit. As for all of the other levels though, oh, these are all faithfully recreated, and they're just as great as they were in the original games, especially the Pro Skater 3 levels. Like, the Pro Skater 3 levels are just legendary. The level design is superb in every sense of the word, and even though they did mess with a few of the Pro Skater 4 levels, all of the other ones are still excellent. This game also introduces 2 new levels, the water park and this pinball level, and I actually think these are pretty great also, and they totally fit in with the other levels. There's plenty to see, there's a lot to interact with, there's some secrets, and they all have a really good flow to them. It also feels like they were meticulously laid out like the rest of the Pro Skater levels, and I think the objectives in these levels are really great also. I think the objectives in all of the levels are actually very well done. It's a shame not all of them return here, but what we actually did get are pretty solid, and they look nice too. This is a good looking game. It doesn't look absolutely fantastic, it's not going to blow you away like Death Stranding or Ghost of Tsushima, but I still think it looks very nice with some nice environments, decent lighting, some weird looking character models, but at least the animations are pretty good. And the game still absolutely has that sense of style. It's still got the same vibes as the older games, and I really fuck with it. Pro Skater 3 and 4 always had this really playful tone, and I think that's been accurately recreated here. But let's actually get into the nitty-gritty of things for a second here. Let's talk about that core moment-to-moment gameplay. It's excellent. It's superb. It really is just 1+2's gameplay carried over. But 1+2 had some pretty freaking good gameplay. The controls were excellent, the physics were superb, and it just felt really nice to play. In this game, yeah, it feels really nice to play. It's arguably the best feeling Tony Hawk game of them all. And they brought in all of the cool tricks and moves that you could do in Pro Skater 4 and Thug. So you can do all these different fancy types of tricks, combos, and maneuvers. You can string together some loony shit in this game, and yeah, it really feels nice. Of course it's gonna feel nice. It looks great, it plays great. It is exactly what you would want from a Pro Skater game, at least when it comes to how it feels on the controller and how responsive everything is. I really got no complaints there. We are far away from whatever nonsense Peak 5 had. It also certainly helps things that this game has just a fantastic flow and pace to it overall. You're going through levels pretty fast, and all of the levels do genuinely still feel really different from each other, and there's plenty of memorable moments here and there. And when it comes to how much content and secrets there are in this game, there's more than you might realize. While it won't take you more than like 7 or 8 hours to go through all of the levels, if you complete all of the goals, you actually get the pro goals, which are not fucking around. They're actually very difficult. But if you want to 100% it, you're going to be here even longer, and I think it's actually worth it. There's a lot of secrets and some really great stuff in the shop, including a number of fun characters. Michelangelo from TMNT shows up here, Officer Dick and Constable Richard are here, both voiced and modeled by Jack Black. Yeah, Steve from Minecraft himself. The Birdman is here, which is just fucking weird in a completely different art style, and then there's a bunch of cool things you get to add on to the game and filters, and I think the shop's actually pretty cool in this game. One thing I will knock for this game though is that they're basically charging $20 to play as the Doomslayer and Revenant. I mean, it is really cool that they're in here. They have some awesome tricks, animations, and there's a bunch of Doom music, but like $20? Really? Like, yeah, you get a few other things here and there and some early access, early air quotes. 20 is just too much, but my dumbass bought it anyway because I'm just a huge Doom shill. On top of all of this, we have the online multiplayer, which I haven't played a ton of, but it seems to be pretty good. The free skate is fun. There's a decent amount of modes here, and I'm sure plenty of people are going to flock to it for a long time. And speaking of flocking to for a long time, let's talk about the soundtrack. I love Pro Skater 3 and 4 soundtrack to pieces, so I was very curious to see which tracks would return from 3 and 4, and while there are, like a dozen or so that return, a lot of them did not, unfortunately. A majority of the music is new tracks, and while it's decent enough, it's not 3 and 4's music, damn it. A song from Pro Skater 5 even returns here, which is just odd. Like, I enjoy most of the new music, but this is also a remake of 3 and 4. I want the 3 and 4 music for the most part, but you know what? At least what we got here, it was pretty good, even if there is a bunch of missing music. But let's wrap things up here. Overall, 3+4 is still a pretty great game, and it's one of the best Tony Hawk games ever made. I mean, at the end of the day, it still is a remake of 2 of the best Tony Hawk games. It'd be pretty hard to muck it up, but with Tony Hawk, you just never know. Are they the most faithful remakes? Absolutely not, but I still think the game is excellent and totally worth your time, especially if you enjoy 3 and 4. I'm honestly pretty torn on whether or not I prefer 1+2 or 3+4, but at the end of the day, I'm going to give the edge to 3+4 because I personally enjoy Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4 more than 1 and 2, but both games are on a very similar quality and they're both worth your time. I really have no problem giving this game my highest recommendation and think it's the best skateboarding game to come out in years, many years, and I'd be surprised if any other game can top it anytime soon. And then here we have it, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, releasing initially in 2001. Pro Skater 3. This is, in my opinion, not only the best of the entire Tony Hawk series, but one of my favorite video games of all time. And I would go as far as to say that this really is one of the greatest video games of all time. There's not many games I would put above Pro Skater 3. This game is just legendarily good. So what made it so good? Well, they really built on top of what the first 2 Pro Skater games had and just brought it together in a way that not only had never been seen before, but hasn't really been seen since. It was just that near perfect amalgamation, and it does not matter how many years have passed, I still love this game to pieces and think it's phenomenal. And that's why I was so excited that Pro Skater 3 was getting remade, but at the end of the day, I've realized Pro Skater 3, the original, it's just kinda goated. And for me personally, I don't know if any Tony Hawk game, or really extreme sports game, is ever going to be able to pass up Pro Skater 3. This was also the first Tony Hawk game that I ever played, so I obviously have a lot of sentimental value, but I really do think that it's legit. When it comes to the game's format and structure, very similar to the first 2 Pro Skaters. Pick one of your favorite skaters at the time, jump into a level, you got a 2-minute timer to complete some goals, you can do some crazy tricks, there's a few collectibles here and there, and a bunch of little Easter eggs. When it comes to the levels in this game, oh my goodness, the levels of Pro Skater 3, they're just phenomenal. There's not a bad level here, and my favorite Tony Hawk levels of all time are right here in this game. I love all of them to pieces, especially like Airport. That's just like my favorite map in the whole damn game. But it goes deeper than that. They're all the right size. You can explore them all pretty quickly, but there's still a bunch of little nooks and crannies. There's plenty of secrets and there's Easter eggs hidden all over the place. And it really is just a joy to go from one corner of the map to the other. The level design really is chef's kiss. It really is peak out here. And the same really goes for the objectives you're given in these levels as well. They're not overly complex. They're not complicated. They're all pretty simple and easy to understand, but they're so much fun to complete. I've always very much enjoyed the objectives of Pro Skater 3. I've also really enjoyed how this game controls. Sure, there are better controlling Tony Hawk games out there. 1+2 and 3+4 do feel better than Pro Skater 3, but this game still feels pretty freaking amazing, and it's aged incredibly well. It's incredibly responsive. It always feels like you have total control over the skateboard and what move you're going to do next. It's really easy to pick up and understand. I can tell you that from experience, but there is so much depth, and this third game introduced one of the most important maneuvers in the entire Tony Hawk series. It's probably not as important as the manual, but it's up there, the revert, where you're able to turn the board around after you go off a half pipe, meaning that you can actually continue your combo. And this, well, this just opens up a whole new realm of possibilities. This, like the manual, really was a game changer, and now you can string together just so many crazy wild combos, it's not even funny. The skill ceiling really gets raised to such a high degree thanks to this maneuver, and I love it. I think it's an amazing addition, and I genuinely have trouble going back to the older Tony Hawk games where this just wasn't a thing. The revert feels amazing, and it adds so much to the gameplay. Doing tricks is so enjoyable in this game, and even all these years later, it's still such a spectacle to see a bunch of these crazy maneuvers being pulled off, and it really is just so much fun. It's aged very well, it's easy to play nowadays, and you won't be struggling with the controls at all. Something else that I think is aged very nicely is the presentation. This game has a nice look to it, it's got a great aesthetic and vibe, it's very playful in nature, and it really carries over what the first two games had. Arguably, the vibe is even better here than those prior games. And then the soundtrack, oh my goodness, I love the soundtrack to Pro Skater 3 to pieces. Pieces, I tell ya. There's not a bad song here. I've been listening to this shit for well over 15 years, and I'll listen to it to 15 more years. It's just really good shit. Now, going back to the presentation for a second, if you are going to play this game nowadays, I would recommend the Xbox version. Not only does it have an additional level, the oil rig, but it also is the best frame rate. And while the frame rate certainly isn't bad for the PS2 version, the GameCube version, yeah, it's a little stuttery and it can be laggy at times, which will fuck with your movements. But generally speaking, you'll be fine with the PS2 or Xbox version. Something else I want to bring up about Pro Skater 3 is all of the secrets. I've played through this game so many damn times with so many of the skaters, and I feel like I'm almost always discovering something new. There's just so many charming, quirky little things thrown in these levels that I love so much. I also love this game's character roster. Like, it's really good shit. Obviously, all of the main skaters you'd want are here, but the celebrity guest skaters go pretty wild. Darth Maul, Wolverine, Kelly Slater, Doom Guy if you're on PC, the Neversoft Eye shows up. We even got weird ones in here like Ollie the Magic Bum. I just love this game's character roster. Like, it's pretty cool shit. I mean, Darth Maul and Wolverine alone make the roster. And I knew from the moment that the 3 remake was announced, it wasn't going to have either of these characters, and you know, that's just the unfortunate reality of licensing these days. On top of all of this, there's multiplayer, and the multiplayer is still excellent. I've had many hours of fun in this game's multiplayer. I've had hundreds, if not dozens of hours of fun in Pro Skater 3. It really is one of my favorites of all time. It's an all-timer for me. And it's one of those games that I can give my absolute highest recommendation to. If you like video games at all, if you breathe air, I recommend you try Pro Skater 3. It's not the most widely accessible nowadays, unfortunately, but it's still phenomenal. But I've already been here long enough. I don't want to be here all night. I've got a life. And so with that, that is the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed it so much. I'm gonna just say spicy nuggets and leave you a compilation that thatguybiz, the shopkeeper, made of when I streamed Pro Skater 5. And yeah, I'll see you all later. Bye-bye now. This game fucking sucks, man. I hate this game, man. I didn't even get pro. Okay, maybe I am dog shit. I really hate this game, man. It ruined my life for a few days. It ruined my life. I hate this game. I think he might hate this game. No way. What is wrong with this thing? Connect. I guess the game gets destroyed. I didn't make it 3 hours. This game is fucking shit, man. I hate this fucking game. It's bending. This game. Oh. Fucking piece of shit. Look at this. Xbox is all like, are you missing the disc? Yeah, the disc is right here. Chat, clip that. Fucking hate it. Just bend it. I'm just playing with putty here. Oh, there we go. Pro Skater 5. There we go. So, goodbye, Pro Skater 5. We hate it. The end. It's over. I'm just fucking done. See ya.
Meanwhile, 1 hour later.
Oh, there's somebody there. I can't get up.
2 hours later.
Okay.
3 hours later. One eternity later.
Oh. There's some people that donated some money. Well, thank you very much. I was literally fucking sleeping. Oh, I don't feel so good, man. I need some fucking water. I am out. I'll be back in a minute.